Vanderbilt's Eli Stowers is amongst the most elite athletes in the 2026 NFL Draft, and he is an impact tight end prospect.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Damian Parson. That's Keith Sanchez. On today's episode, we're breaking down Vanderbilt elite athlete and tight end Eli Stowers. We're going to explain the grade, give you the NFL comps, go over the concerns we have with his game and his profile, but we're going to kick the show off with the pros as always. We start with the good news and why you should like him as a prospect. Keith, when you think about Eli Stowers, what's that superpower? What's that A trait for him going into the NFL? This was a guy that came in at 6'4" or so, 6'5", 230, 240, jumped 45 and a half inch in the vert, I believe. Pretty much, I mean, it was multiple guys that jumped 43 inches and a half. I think he jumped 45 and a half. And he also ran in the 4.4s or 4.5 flat somewhere in there in the 40-yard dash. Eli Stowers, playmaking tight end for Vanderbilt. What's that A trait, that superpower for him?
Yeah, DP, you have to go athleticism, right? You talked vertical, you talked 40-yard dash. Just his high level testing, right? And for a tight end, DP, that was what he did at the combine. It's all time, right? As far as all time numbers, I mean, he ranks up towards the top. When you look at, I went on Mock Draftable, I believe, and I think that span was from since 1999 or something right there. So close to about 20 years of data points. And from there, DP, when you look at tight ends, he ranks towards the top in 40-yard dashes, right? The vertical, things like that. So you allow the athleticism to be able to translate on the field to what's the superpower, and this versatility and being a mismatch issue. That he's going to line up at tight end or say he's a tight end, but you have to have somebody as far as a defensive back that can cover wide receivers, because that's wide receiver testing numbers, right? Even if he tested as a wide receiver, DP, he still would have probably tested in the upper quarter, right? Like probably in the top 20% of wide receivers. So when he comes out and breaks out of the huddle, if you're a defensive coordinator, you better make sure you have somebody that can cover him at the end of the day, because he showed the ability to flat out get open. And lastly, what I want to talk about, and it's tied to the athleticism also, is the run after catch ability. This is a very and you don't say this much with guys outside playing running back, but I thought he had pretty good vision, DP, vision and contact balance. Like he's a sturdy lower half type of player, which allows him to break tackles. And for me, with tight ends, I always say this, that's one of my biggest athletic traits for success for a tight end, is their ability to break tackles, is their contact balance, run after the catch abilities, because they're always around people, right? Like they play majority in the middle of the field. So they're within 5 yards most times of a lot of defenders. And so if you want to be able to get yardage, go look at the George Kittles, go look at the Robert Gronkowskis, go look at all of these great tight ends. They're really good after the catch. They have good, sturdy lower halves, and they almost turn into 6'3", 245-pound running backs, which are difficult to tackle in the open field. So for Eli Stowers, it's the athleticism, and then all of the branches that branch off for the athleticism as far as the superpower.
No, absolutely. And I want to make sure I got the numbers right for our listeners. 6'4", 239 to combine, 32.58 on the arm, 9 3/4 on the hand, 4.51, 1.59 10-yard split, 45.5-inch vert with 11.3 broad. This is an explosive athlete. This is just for a guy this is the type of guy you want to get the ball in his hands in space and allow that athleticism to shine. Because I think when I was watching him, I like the feel of the game that he displayed, in the quick game, against zone coverages, things of that nature. Running in the NFL, we see so much quick routes to quick hitches and option routes and reading defensive, spot droppers, leverage, and knowing, hey, if you're running the crosser, rule of thumb is simple. If you're running the crosser, if they drop back, you go underneath. If they step forward, you go behind them, right? Like you try to avoid the contact so you can run your crosser freely. He does that stuff well. He runs the quick hitches well, the over the ball routes, the OTB routes well. But then you see the movement skills in terms of not just straight line speed, but I like the lateral movement skills and fluidity he brings because I'm watching him. I think it was against Texas. He didn't get the ball, but they had like they had the little linebacker kind of waiting on him, and he was running a over route, a deep crosser, and he basically rocker stepped him and kind of juked the guy at his shoes, got around him, and I'm like, if only his quarterback was tall enough to see him wide open, he would have got the ball. But Pavia went somewhere else with the ball. But then in that same game, like Pavia threw it to him in the kind of a over route in the high red zone. It was a little bit behind him. You saw him grab the ball with confident hands. Then he bounced off of like 2 or 3 tackles and got into the end zone, right? So, heck, and to your point, when you talk about the athletic profile, Texas put Malik Muhammad, their star corner, against him a couple times. I'm like, that makes sense. You want somebody that can actually defend this guy. So, yeah, I think, you hit a lot of that on the head, Keith. I like the body control to high point passes. And I think an underrated part of his game too, Keith, is that he's not some wild blocker, but he's a pretty solid insert blocker in the run game. Of course, you want him. I want him better suited to deal with DBs and linebackers. I don't want him going up against true edges because he isn't built for that. But talking about having, teams wide 9 and the edge rusher, if you got Jared Verse wide 9, perfect. I'm telling Eli Stowers, you go get that linebacker. My tackle can go and get, Jared Verse. Like he'll kind of loop around or pull around you and get Verse. I'm not trying to have you go against Verse. I'm getting you more advantageous matchups.
Yeah, DP, I want to finish on, I feel like you kind of went this way, and that was his ability to read coverages and just talk about his background, right? He's a young man out of high school, if I remember, because he might have been one of the last recruiting classes that I went through at LSU. Was a quarterback, former quarterback, and was a highly rated quarterback coming out of high school. I want to even say that he went to Texas A&M initially as a quarterback. And so I think it's discussed a whole lot, DP, with Julian Edelman, totally different position, totally different body types, right? But they always talk about why Julian Edelman was so successful being a former quarterback, right? And understood defenses. And you see that with Eli Stowers. Like he was talking about, like he understands, okay, cool, zone coverage. If I was a quarterback, I would want to sit right here, right? And he sits down, right? If I was a quarterback, I would want you to keep climbing. And so for me, DP, when I'm thinking about that and you talk about potential rookie impact players, why not him? Right. I start making the case of saying, listen, this young man has played quarterback. He got some of the best coaching, right? Well, not some of the best coaching, but he got high level coaching at the quarterback position, playing in the SEC, right? And transitioning to tight end, right? And then now he understands this position in depth. Why can't he be potentially a step or two ahead of guys when he steps into training camp, right? You're talking about rookie minicamp or training camp, because he has the knowledge from the other point of view, right? And so we're talking about so many sight adjustments, and that's why veterans win. We always talk about, and he didn't test like them, right? But like the Jason Wittens and the Todd Heaps and the Heath Millers from back in the days, they won because they were very smart football players. Well, I asked myself, why can't Eli Stowers, maybe he's not going to come in like a 10-year veteran, right? But maybe he comes in with the knowledge of a year 2, year 3 guy because he played the quarterback position too, right? And when you play the quarterback position, you not only have to worry about what you're doing, you have to know the entire play. So some of these concepts, he understands what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Like even if I'm the third option, why is it important for me to run this route at 4 yards and sit, right? Because I'm trying to pull this defender. So watching him, DP, I got even more intrigued and excited about his potential. And it's not a stock up, stock down segment, but I'm stock up on him even outside of the athletic traits, just because I think he's a high IQ player.
No, 100%. And I think, to your point, you even look at Richard Sherman, right? Him, Tariq Woolen, both of those are former converted receivers to DB, and how that allowed them. They know what wide receivers do. They know how to read the movements and everything else, like little telltales. Playing quarterback, like you said, he went to Texas A&M, then he went to New Mexico State. I believe he got beat out by Diego Pavia to play quarterback, and he became the tight end. He became the guy who beat him out at quarterback. He became his best friend in the passing offense. So when I look at Eli Stowers, Keith, do I look at him as a true inline guy? Not necessarily right now. I think that he can get stronger and more physical at the POA. He's 239. Can we get you to 245, 247? Just bulk you up a little bit without sacrificing some of your speed. But I think this is a potential impact tight end man, I think this is a potential impact tight end at the next level. You get him with the right play caller that know that I mean, I go back to Terrence Ferguson. You remember when Terrence Ferguson came out, I think I had like a third, maybe fourth round grade on him. And I think he went like second round or something like that because McVay saw him as a pure pass catcher. He was like, hey, we got Tyler Higbee. We got some of the guys who can run block. We're going to use you as a pass catcher. I think that's the type of situation I would like to see Eli Stowers go into, where they don't force him to be a dominant run blocker, but they emphasize that pass catching ability.
Yep, DP, we talked athleticism, we talked versatility, all key traits for the success of Eli Stowers. Let's talk about the concerns, though. When we watch the film, what concerns us or what do we feel like he needs to improve on as he enters into the NFL? Let's discuss that coming up next.
What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not just you against the house, it's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. And now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. Don't forget to check out the Everydayer Club for ad-free episodes like the ones today and access our group chat via Discord, where you can talk to me, Keith, other listeners of the show, just other NFL draft listeners and fans of the show altogether. Tap the link in the show notes or go to lockedonnfldraft.supercast.com to join and become a member. The concerns, Keith, when it comes down to Eli Stowers, we gave him a glowing praise that started off. I feel like we always set people up, though, Keith. Like we speak so highly of him, and then it's like, we got to talk about what you don't do well. But let's talk about Keith. I think for me, I mentioned it like towards the end, it's the play strength for me, and it's not just as a run blocker where you see it kind of pop up. It shows up as a route runner too, because like even in that Texas game, I think it was Anthony Hill. Was playing physical coverage with him, off ball linebacker, one of the better linebackers in this class, doesn't get talked about enough and everything. And he got physical with him mid route, and he was able to slow him down, throw off the tempo, throw off the pacing of the route and everything like that. I think Diego Pavia ended up going somewhere else with the football, but I see that a lot where either guys get hands on and they can disrupt them. And then at the catch point, like he, of course, elite leaper and athlete, but I want to see him play with more physicality at the catch point. Like Malik Muhammad was able, he wasn't able to fully get there, but you could tell it was like a throw up the seam. He kind of cross face up the seam on Malik Muhammad, and Diego Pavia threw it to him, hit him in the hands, but Muhammad's playing his frame. He's playing the body. He can't get to the ball because of the difference in reach and length and everything else, but he plays through the body, and I believe that was what caused Eli Stowers to drop that ball. The ball, it was a ball out in front of him, extend the arms, just catch it, bring it in. He dropped it in the middle of the field, right? But there was a physical play to his frame that threw that off for him. I want to see him embrace his frame and embrace more physicality and toughness when the ball is arriving, because you're going to deal with that in the NFL. God, whether it's a safety, a linebacker, or a corner, somebody's going to be in close proximity to you on some of these, especially if they're playing man-to-man coverage. You got to make these more difficult grabs against tight coverage, against physicality.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to define him from being a all-purpose, well-rounded, in every situation tight end versus being, and put in the category of the finesse tight end, right? Like the big slot wide receiver type of situation. And I don't even want to, you bring up the blocking. We said that, that part have to get improved on, things like that. But the contested catch, what you said, DP, playing through that action, I think that's something he has to get comfortable with, right? If there's something that's lingering from him making the transition from quarterback to tight end is that part. And you've seen him like there are highlights of him, absorbing contact and big time plays, but I think it's the consistent part of it, right? And like we said, just because you're always in the middle of the field, right? Like that just has to be the expectations that I got to catch the football and I'm going to get hit, right? But if I do this enough, I'm gonna get paid the big bucks. And I think that's where you have to kind of look at the transition or the trade-off, however you want to say it, for Eli Stowers. Also, DP, I think he can run routes a little bit more crispier. To me, he's a rounded off, fluid type of route runner, right? Like if you look at the charts, they're not like straight edges, right? It's rounded type of charts. There's a lot of speed out, right, to where you can kind of drift upfield a little bit. I think he can improve on that, because when you're talking about utilizing him as the athletic trait says that if everything goes well, you could potentially stick him in as in talking about playing at the highest level, right? Like he has the athletic ability to potentially be a second option for an offense, right?
Absolutely.
But with that comes, like you talked about, matchups, right? If Texas did it, just imagine what the NFL does, right? And you potentially have to start going against these high level nickels and these high level corners, right? So your Derwin James, your Kyle Hamiltons, your Trent McDuffie's, right? Like that's going to require you to reach another level of route running to be able to beat those guys, because when it comes to just flat out foot speed, they're right in par with you, right? They're right on the same level with you. So you have to find another way to be able to beat them in man-to-man situations. In zone, I think he'll thrive. I think he'll figure that part out. And man, that's the part where you want to see it from him.
Yeah, I mean, with the NFL playing so much zone, I think that you'll see you can see some early success from him. But when teams do say, let's go man across the board and let's play physical, let's disrupt timing, let's like get into your airspace and make you uncomfortable. Like you got to be comfortable with being made uncomfortable in the NFL, because nothing is going to be perfect. And I think, again, he has impact player of a ceiling to where it's like, man, like you talk about the speed outs, the over routes, the crossers, like even the slant, like, and to your point, I think he ran a slant. And I was just like, you did like the jab step, the plant. It wasn't like violent. It didn't, you didn't kind of spring out of there like you were coming out of the starting blocks in the 100-meter dash. I want to see that more violence, that more sharpness. Because like you said, he does round his routes. I noticed that too. I was like, speed outs. I'm like, okay, I get it. You can round those a little bit, but in the NFL, you might want to stop that drift a little bit. You know what I mean? Like you drift too far upfield in the NFL, that's a pick six, because that dude's undercutting it.
Yeah, when you talked about your Anthony Hill conversation, right, with just him getting hands on, defensive backs want you to do that, right? They want to be able to push you a little bit 2 yards and you take it 3 or 4, right? When they push you 2 yards out the way and you just go the extra 2 steps, right? Like he has to start fighting back against that, or like you said, come with different releases that get your foot firing immediately to win way quicker, right? And to be able to get into your route.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the big development for him is developing those counters against man coverage, because you're going to, and for a lot of tight ends, you don't expect to see as much man coverage, because if you're in line, it's hard to man cover a guy that's in line, right? Because just from the alignment of the defender, if you're a nickel, you're a corner, and you're the nickel corner, you're not lined directly head up to that guy because he's in line. So you're probably shaded off to his outside shoulder, and if he's running the over up, you're already behind the 8 ball because he's got that leverage to just take it up that direction. But when you're flexed out, because he's the perfect flex option for an offense. Flex you at Z, flex you at X, flex you at the big slot, right? And I think looking at him, I'm like, all right, if we're going to flex you, what happens when you do see a nickel or you see a Brian Branch safety? You see a Derwin James at safety. Dear God, you see Nick Ebenwari, who's out here shutting down receivers in the nickel. When you see these type of guys who can match you, Branch might not match you for the size standpoint, but Branch is outstanding man-to-man coverage safety and nickel. Derwin James is going to match you for size. Nick Ebenwari is going to match you for size. There's multiple guys in the league right now that can match you and go size for size, and not just size, but athletic profiles where they can run with you. What happens when those guys get physical? They shade you inside and they play to the strength of their coverage. Can you fight, like you said, fight back against it, fight through the grain, and get to your spot? That's the key. If you're supposed to be running an out route and he's playing outside leverage, what's your answer to getting outside? Like, you got to have an answer for that. So it's just, I think it's some nuanced stuff that, again, this is a former quarterback, so there's still mental development to have to happen with this young man, Keith. Like, you expect him to develop more mentally because you are not a natural tight end who's played tight end since your freshman year of high school. You're a former quarterback.
Yep. Well, coming up next, DP, you know what we do, man. We're about to drop the grade, right? Which grade did we give Eli Stowers? What draft grade did we give Eli Stowers? And then we're going to discuss an NFL comp, right? Which NFL comps do we have for Vanderbilt tight end Eli Stowers as he enters the 2026 NFL draft? Let's talk about that coming up next.
This is a time of year where all you really want is something warm, easy, and satisfying. And that's why Home Chef has become such a go-to. It takes stress out of dinner and makes it simple to actually enjoy cooking again. Home Chef makes cooking easy with fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients, simple recipes, and meals that taste great. The meals are quick, from 30-minute recipes to oven-ready options when you don't want to think. They have tons of variety. Over 30 meals each week, so it never feels repetitive. And everything's proportioned out for you. So there's less prep and less cleanup. It just makes dinner feel manageable, even on the busiest of days. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off and free shipping for your first box, plus free dessert for life. Go to homechef.com/lockedonnfl. That's homechef.com/lockedonnfl for 50% off your first box and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in America. It's all because of you. Eli Stowers explaining the grade and giving the NFL comps. Keith, what grade do you have for Vanderbilt star tight end Eli Stowers?
I gave him a solid 83. In 83 at Draft Network, that's a second round grade that puts you at a winning starter, right? Meaning that maybe not Pro Bowl level, but a guy that can consistently perform at a high level that you feel really comfortable with. And I think that's where he can reach. NFL comp, and I may have the same exact comp that you have because it wasn't, when we talk about the athleticism. I went with Evan Engram, DP. And I went with Evan Engram because of the ebbs and the athleticism, very similar. The body types, I believe, are very similar, but also the peaks and valleys of Evan Ingram's career, depending on where he was at in the utilization of him, I think was very important because when Evan came into the NFL, I think that the NFL was still embracing tight ends in their role, right? Like he kind of came in on the back end of like being strictly inline guys to like transition into these flex tight ends. So I don't think we got the very best out of Evan early, but there were a couple years springing in through his career where he showed to be a pretty, dynamic playmaker, what we thought he was coming out of Ole Miss. The other guy I thought of, man, he got drafted by the Vikings a few years ago. Was it Irv Smith? Irv Smith.
Alabama.
Out of Alabama. Yeah, another guy that was pretty athletic, whose career just didn't pan out. And like I said, I think both of those guys, they fell into the bucket of the NFL
drafted before their time.
Yeah, drafted before their time, right? And the NFL not fully embracing, those hybrid kind of roles and tight ends being more in line. So that's what I have for Eli Stowers.
Yeah, no, I like that kid. I have a 7.6 for him, which is a back of the second round. We call it a key contributor over at Bleacher Report. Second round player, back in the second round, early third. I think, again, he has impact upside, the elite athletic traits. I don't know if anybody asks, like, oh, does he play to the speed? I feel like, when you see guys test at the combine, like, oh, he ran a 4.5, run 4.4, or 4.3. Understand that these guys aren't getting the chance to just run in a straight line. So you're not always going to see 4.3 on tape unless they're able to get out in front and you see him be able to reach top speed. But he plays with more more pacing and patience as a mover and as a route runner to let things diagnose. And I think you brought up the fact of the QB background, that plays a big part in how he's able to read and identify what's going on post snap, because he had to do it from the pocket. So I love that part of his game. I had the same comp, Evan Engram. And for those, you're talking about just measuring them guys upside, tail of the tape. Eli Stowers, 6'4", 239, 4.51, 45.5-inch vert, as I talked about earlier. He came in with 32.5/8 on the arm length, 79 3/4 on the arm, right? You look at Evan Engram, 6'3", 234, 33.5-inch arms, 10-inch hands, 4.42 in the 40. He had a 36-inch vert. He ended up doing the 3-cone and short shuttle and stuff. I don't believe that we have that for Stowers. Stowers did jump 11.2 in the broad and everything like that. So what you see is that they match up very well, as Keith already had alluded to. And then even the concerns, right? Evan Engram was a big wide receiver, a slot wide receiver at was an Ole Miss when he came out. And like you said, being drafted before your time, where you were asked to do things that you weren't accustomed to doing, or you weren't like good at doing, where, hey, I'm not really suited to be a true inline blocker blocking, TJ Watts of the world and all those guys. I'm more suited to be a dynamic pass catching option. Heck, if you go back to Ingram's time early in his career, I think with the Giants, I believe that's who drafted him. He struggled with drops. He struggled with the same thing we talked about with Stowers, the physicality and everything. He struggled with that early. Then I believe when he was traded to Jacksonville, or he signed with Jacksonville, whatever it was. He went to Jacksonville. He ended up having some good years in Jacksonville. He adjusted, he adapted, but it took a little bit of time. And I think that's the thing with Stowers is no matter where he's drafted, the teams, the fan base, give him some grace, give him time to get acclimated to the level of play that he's going to be facing. Because I think if you do that and you let him, and I say slow cook him, like you can't play him, but you allow him, don't put the, hey, we need you to be Travis Kelce. Like, no, I don't think you need to do that. You know what I mean? Like, just let him find his way. Let him get adjusted and adapt to the physicality of the NFL. Because if he does and he gets stronger and more physical and he's handling it better, you got yourself a playmaker that can play all three downs, end up being a top 10 potential tight end in the league.
Yeah, DP, and it's funny you mentioned Travis Kelce, because real quick, I wanted to spend the next 2 minutes just discussing possible landing spots for him. And I think I think what it is that by him testing so well, he gives teams a lot of options in the second round, right? To be like, okay, let's go get this. If we, don't get our hands on King and Sadiq, we could go get Eli Stowers in the second round. And it's funny because the first team I thought of was the Chiefs, right? Because I know we mocked King and Sadiq to the Chiefs, but if I'm sitting there and I'm Kansas City, you now would have 2 first-round picks, right? And so you can choose to bolster your defense or offense however you want to, and then potentially grab you have pick 40, I believe, in the draft. So I like that situation just from the perspective of, I always talk about it, that transition with a Hall of Famer, right? Meaning that the young guy gets an opportunity to play with Travis Kelce. And the thing of what Travis is too, Travis is a savvy guy, right? Like he's not a full speed route winner either, but he understands how to play the position and is a high IQ player. So I look at it from that perspective. I have to do my research. I can't remember if Travis Kelce was a former quarterback. Also, I can't remember.
I can't remember either. Like,
I'm gonna look that up. But yeah, I like him in Kansas City as tight end 2 for a year or two, however long Travis Kelce plays with the 3-year deal. But some people say it's a year or two. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. But I like him sitting behind Travis Kelce.
Yeah, no, I like that. You said the 40th pick for Kansas City. If he were to slip and he's there at 74, you take that. That's a steal of a value. I look at the Ravens, Keith. They lost Isaiah Likely in free agency. Behind, so you got Mark. Heck, they lost 2 tight ends, if I'm not mistaken. They lost him and I think Charlie Kolar. So you gotta kind of replenish that situation. And Mark Andrews is not young anymore. Like he's a little bit older of a player at this stage of his career.
I like that spot too. I like that situation.
I think 45, man, pick 45. If the Chiefs don't pick him at 40, 5 picks later, you got the Ravens right there on the board at 45. Let's say you go Vega, Ione from Penn State to get that guard and improve that offensive line some more. And then, or you go Jordan Tyson or a wide receiver. Why not double down and get
you
Eli
go
Stowers?
literally if the Ravens, right, and you address the 2 positions that you lost Tyler Lindenbaum, so you get another interior offensive lineman, see if you can reshuffle the deck, and then you lost Isaiah Likely, right, to the New York Giants, and you be able to replace that part of it. And Isaiah Likely, if you paid attention to the Ravens, his role appeared to be growing more and more as far as how important it was. So
he was their dynamic playmaker outside of Zay Flowers, Keith. And I'll throw another part to it. Declan Doyle, who's the new offensive coordinator, he spent last year with the Chicago Bears learning and working and coaching underneath Ben Johnson. And remember, when they drafted Colston Loveland, they already had Cole Kmet as tight end one, as that run blocker early in the season. And then you start to see them put that influx of Colston Loveland start to usurp him in terms of impact. So you're talking about being able to run 2 tight end sets. Declan Doyle and that experience under Ben Johnson last year and seeing how they ran that Bears offense with Caleb Williams, tell me you couldn't do that same thing if you drafted Eli Stowers, paired them with Mark Andrews, and you run Mark Andrews and Eli Stowers, and like you said, let him take that Isaiah Likely role. The off the ball tight end, H-back, motion guy, big slot, like just bring that dynamicism and verticality to your offense, especially if you don't get a receiver early. If they want to wait till later, but you get yourself a potential impact player at the tight end position, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep, and DP, according to Google, Travis Kelce was a high school quarterback. So they kind of had similar paths. High school quarterbacks got to Cincinnati, and then
we do research here, guys. We do research here on Locked On NFL Draft.
That was per Google. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at the Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all can talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. On tomorrow's show, guys, we're doing perfect prospect pairings. We're taking multiple quarterbacks from this class, and we're going to find the perfect situation, the perfect NFL landing spots for them. Kicking the show off with Ty Simpson and Garrett Nussmeier. I'm probably going to tell you why. I think there's a spot that Garrett Nussmeier makes more sense than Ty Simpson. We're going to talk about all that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.